Underneath here, guys, we got the common guide holder. Okay, the guide fits on one side, the common guide's on the top side. Okay, this is probably the part that's the most pain in the ass to take off and put back on the heads, because you can't really see the bolts. You got to get underneath to see them. Okay, so there's 3 2.5mm screws to take off. Common guide holder comes off. Okay. There's an O-ring that sits right here, guys. A lot of times it likes to stick to the top of the upper head. Make sure that stays. Okay, this is the common guide. Okay. So the C on the guide wrench is going to take out the common guide. There's 2 flats on it. Turns that out. Common guide does not have to be replaced, guys, for basically changing wire size. Okay, about a 16 thousandths hole in here, I think, or actually it might be bigger than that nowadays. Used to be 16 thousandths on the FAs. But that's another thing that you guys can just toss in the ultrasonic cleaner, cleans it up, you're in good shape. Okay. Once that comes out, guys, we're going to take off the indicator mounting plate. Okay, it's this plate right here.
That's not all it's for. It's for the indicator.
That's it.
That's the whole reason I got that. That's beautiful.
Only thing it's for. Reason we're taking that off, guys, is to get the guide D holder. Okay? Excuse me, guide U holder. I apologize. Okay? So basically we take the 2 screws out to get to that. Guide U holder comes out. Okay? Of course, I don't have a 1.5mm Allen wrench. There's a 1.5mm set screw that holds this thing in place. Okay? So loosen the set screw, and the guide U is going to come out. Okay? If it seizes up on you, which a lot of times it doesn't want to come out, that's why there's this little thing on the guide wrench. You can push that thing out of there. Okay? Now basically, guys, same thing with the guide C. Okay, guide U is just a ceramic line guide. Doesn't have to be replaced for different wire sizes. It just needs to be cleaned from time to time. Okay, when you put this back in, guys, there's a roll pin right here, and on the guide itself there's a channel. Okay, so you line up the channel with the roll pin and then put it back in place. The channel does not go all the way through, so you can't accidentally put it upside down. Okay, it was originally thought to be completely idiot-proof, but some inventive person figured out that if they put the flat to where the roll pin is, they can put it upside down. Okay? So it's not completely idiot-proof, but close.
They make better idiots.
Okay. So anyways, guys, once that's out of there, okay, one thing you do want to pay attention to is the power feeder block. Okay, remember on day 1 I was talking about how this thing slides forward to get it out of the way during the thread cycle. You get a lot of buildup around here on this seam, okay, this thing will start seizing up and it won't move. Okay, so a lot of times you want to try to clean up around in here, make sure it's not seized up, move it back and forth. Another thing you got to make sure of, on the newer ones, they seem to be doing a little better job with that, and I'm going to check this one. Okay, this one I don't see anything done on this one, but it seems like they're starting to put Loctite on these. There's 2 ball detents in here, guys, okay, and basically, on most machines that I've seen, they're like this. They're just loose. Okay, you can spin them in or out easily. Okay, I've seen sometimes where they actually kind of start working their way loose, and they start putting pressure on the power feeder block. Okay, if they get too much pressure on there, that'll hinder the movement of the power feeder block, and then the threader quits working. Okay, so usually if I don't see this thing moving back and forth like it's supposed to, this is the very first thing I check. Okay. So when you set these, what you want to do is just kind of hold it up to the light. You just want to barely see them sticking out. Okay? Just want a little bit of clearance.
Ball bearing up.
Right. So, as I said, you know, I've had guys ask, well, is it okay if we put a drop of Loctite on there? Because, I mean, you can thread the whole thing out of there if you want. I don't see that'd be a problem. Just use the blue stuff instead of the red stuff. Another guy was saying, well, we could put another blind screw on top of that and then, you know, lock it in place. You could probably do that too. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Just like I said, you don't want to permanently seal them in, so you don't want to use like the red Loctite. But
It's better off just using a double set screw in there, like you said. That's a good idea.
so
It doesn't wander.
okay, guys, that's about as far as you go with the upper head, as far as taking components apart. Okay. Other things that you're going to clean. Okay, your wire pressing rollers, Q-tip and a little bit of alcohol on the face of those. Cleans those up pretty well. Okay. Cutting electrodes, same thing, Q-tip and a little bit of alcohol. The actual arc is coming from the two brass rollers right here, guys. If they start to wear, that's why they make them round. You can turn them to a new spot. Okay. Annealing rollers, same thing, Q-tip and a little bit of alcohol, clean the face. Make sure those get cleaned up. Okay, the triple roller, guys, which is called your main tension roller, and then main tension roller A and B. Okay, all three of these basically come off, okay, off their posts. The main tension roller is the drive roller, guys. It's actually got a motor pulley here. It's got a belt, connects that, basically turns the main tension roller. It's a big, heavy notch belt, guys. The belts, I mean, I'm not going to say it can't wear out, but I've seen them, you know, never been replaced for years and years, and I've never had a problem. So it's not something that's like a belt that's going to wear out quickly. Okay, the two auxiliary rollers here, guys, main tension roller A and B. Just a thumb screw. You're going to pull it off. Okay, you got a bearing, you got a collar, another bearing. And on the back of that, you have the spacer that I was talking about. Okay. So basically, guys, for the main tension roller, okay, you can see how it's off center. Okay, when this starts to wear and the wire slips, and you'll see it slip when you get into your high tension E-packs. You get into a skim pass, the tension cranks way up from the rough cut to try and straighten out the wall. Okay, you'll see this roller start pulsing and it like stops because it's trying to keep tension on the wire, and it slips and then slips. And it's like going backwards almost. Then it goes, stops, goes. If that thing starts to slip, you'll get false wire breaks. You can have problems with, you know, creating lines in the part. You know, sometimes it makes the wire break, different things like that. Okay. Basically, at that point, your groove in here is so deep that it's starting to slip, so it needs to be flipped around. Okay, this thing you can actually flip it once. Take the handles, you screw them in on the other side, and you flip it. Okay, after that, you can take and pull it off the shaft completely. There's a spacer behind it. You pull the spacer, you put it on the front of the post, and that slides that roller back a little further. Okay, then that moves to a new spot, and then you can flip it one more time. So you got 4 indexing points. Okay, if you do remove the spacer on this one, the spacer has to be removed on these two as well. Otherwise, this roller is further back, and these are still further forward, so they're staggered. Okay, you want all 3 spacers either on the front like that, and then the roller's behind it, or you want it behind the roller. Okay, you don't ever pull the spacer completely out, because then the roller can actually wiggle back and forth a little bit. Okay, it'll have some room to move. Now, this thing is actually connected to that shaft, guys, with a key right there. Okay, you got a keyway and the main tension roller. Okay, when you take this off, make sure the keyway is at the 12 o'clock. Okay, otherwise you pull the roller off and the key falls out. It goes clink, 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 and you never find it again. Yeah. Not that I've ever done that.
No.
Okay, so that's how you basically index those guys. Once every 3 months, as I said, generally you got to take and clean these rollers, clean the main tension roller, and then index it if it needs to be indexed, okay?
Those are the ceramic ones you said?
These two are
look for a
ceramic.
groove
They
in
never
it.
wear out.
Pretty much
It's
they
got a
never wear
groove
out.
starting on the
Should
index.
drop one or do something stupid.
Yeah, don't drop it, it'll break. But as I said, they usually won't ever wear out per se. Okay, the main tension roller will always wear before these do. Okay. Other than that, guys, the notch rollers here, I mean, those are more or less just serving to keep the wire in line. You can take a rag and wipe it if you want, you know, try to clean it up a little bit. The felt wiper, You can take and move that back and forth, go to a different spot, kind of roll it around. If it gets dirty all the way around it, take the screw out, take the two pieces of felt, flip them around, use the other side. Once that's dirty, then you can go ahead and basically replace the two pieces of felt. Okay? So moving on here, guys, the lower head. Okay, it's a little bit more involved than the upper, but still not too bad. Okay, same thing as the upper. The first thing we're taking off is the common guide holder. Okay, we got 3 2.5mm screws. Okay, this one's a little easier to take off because we can actually see the screws, and you're working at it from the top instead of the bottom. Once that comes off, guys, you got your lower common guide. Same thing, spin it out. Common guide, guys, is the exact same part, upper and lower. When you toss them in the ultrasonic cleaner, it doesn't matter if you mix them up. You can put the lower in the upper in the lower. Okay, it doesn't matter. The only two pieces that are different are the actual diamond guides themselves. Okay, once that comes off, guys, we're going to take off the side block. Okay, we got a little wire here. This is basically your lower head sensor. This is how the machine notices that the wire is in the lower head during a thread cycle. Okay, that wire right there. Okay, just push that off to the side, keep the screw. We're going to take off the 2 3mm screws on the flushing block here. This is where the actual lower flushing comes into the head. Okay. You can just leave that laying off to the side. Okay. If you guys look in here, there's an O-ring. It's recessed into that lower head. Make sure that O-ring's still in there when you take that off. Okay. On the right side, guys, you got an air line. Okay, I'm going to pull that off. Okay, it's a flathead screw, comes off. Okay, basically, guys, there's a rubber seal on each side of this bolt. Okay, one right here, you guys can see. Right there. The other one generally likes to stick to the side of the lower head. You guys can see it stuck there. Okay. Usually I take a fingernail and I pry it off of the lower head, because if you pull this lower head off and clean it in the sink, it likes to fall off and then go down the drain and then you lose it. Okay?
That's never happened either, right?
No, that hasn't happened to me either. Okay. Once that comes off, guys, we're going to dismount the upper half of the lower head. Okay, first thing we're going to do is take off the power feed cables. 2 5mm screws here, they come off. Okay.
I think ours are a little bigger than those.
You got more of them. I think it's still a
there's
5mm screw, I think.
Yeah, there's 2 of them. There's 2 like stacked.
There's
on
2
top of
pairs.
each other, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say it looked a little bigger down there.
Eventually, those cables will have to be replaced, guys, over the years. Okay, you get current running through them for so long, it just deteriorates the copper in there, and then you got to replace them. Okay, it takes a pretty long time, though. You know, at least 3 years or better, generally. So the next thing, guys, we're going to take off these caps. Okay, these are isolation caps for the screws. Okay, keeps the crap out of the screws and keeps the isolation process actually working. Because if you get a bunch of sludge in there, that kind of creates a connection between the upper and the lower. Alright. If you do lose those caps, guys, you got 8 extras in your accessories. Okay, once you take those off, guys, you're going to take these 4 3mm screws off. Okay. Now, guys, when you're putting this thing back together, okay, get the damn screw out. There we go.
Pretty tight for ceramic.
Right. Okay. You don't want to put too much torque on these screws, guys. Okay, when I put them back in, I just take and tighten it down by hand like so. Then I take the long end of the wrench, I put one finger on it, and I go just till the wrench starts to flex. That's it. Okay, that width has been working pretty well for me for so far. I haven't broken a plate yet, knock on wood. Okay, I'll say that. Once those 4 screws are out, guys, we can pull the upper half off. Okay, main reason for doing this is so we can get to our guide D, okay, which is the equivalent of guide U in the upper head, okay? So we got 3 2.5mm screws to mount this in place. If you do want to take the plate completely off of the upper half, guys, you got 4 more caps and 4 more screws that'll come off, okay? When you put it back together, though, make sure you put the guide D first, put that in place, and then put the plate on. Because if you put the plate on, it can walk around a little bit, and you'll get to where you can't get that in there. Okay?
More or less locates the plate, huh?
Yes. I usually do dismount the plate completely, guys, when I'm doing a complete cleaning on this thing. It makes it so you can get the plate completely clean, get the upper half clean. Okay. Once that comes off, guys, same deal as the guide U. There's a set screw right here that holds the guide D in place. Okay, you're going to release that. Generally, it's not going to want to come out, so you use your guide pusher.
Tight this time.
The lower head's always going to be more dirty than the upper, guys, because it's under the water all the time and it gets a hell of a lot dirtier. It's just the way it is. Okay. Guide D comes out, okay. As I just stated with the guide C, guys, the guide U and guide D are also the same part number. It does not matter if you mix them up. Okay, so all 6 of those guides can be tossed in the ultrasonic cleaner, and the only ones that are different are the upper and lower diamond guide. Okay. Once that comes off, guys, we're going to take off the aspirator, okay? And we're almost done. We got a few more components, okay? Or rectifier ring is what it used to be called. I think they call it an aspirator on this one. I don't know necessarily why, but... Okay, there's 2 Phillips set screws in that, guys. You got to be careful about those Phillips set screws, okay? They almost completely got rid of them. Unfortunately, there's still a couple. They're stainless. If you don't have a good screwdriver when you put them in there, then, as I said, you know, they like to strip pretty easy. Make sure you don't over torque them when you put them back in. This piece here a lot of times isn't going to want to come out, guys. There's a recessed portion here and here. If you take a flathead screwdriver, you can just pull it out of there. Okay. This doesn't orient any certain way. It can go this way or this way, guys. Just got to make sure all the holes are clean. Okay, these assist with the wire collection. Okay, if these get plugged up, you won't have a stronger collection and you'll start having threading issues. Okay. Once that comes off, guys, next piece we're going to take out is the lower channel. Okay, now this was a very, very good innovation on the new machines over the older FAs and FXs. Okay, they always had a stainless insert in the lower head, guys. It was pressed in. Okay, when the wire threads, at this point it's got to basically make a 90-degree turn and go through the transfer tube to the collection rollers. Okay, over time the wire digs and digs and digs and it eventually wears a groove in that stainless insert. Okay, and the wire will start hanging up when it goes in and makes that 90-degree bend. Okay, on the older machines that stainless piece could not be removed. Okay, and the only place that it could be accessed is through the actual lower roller opening. Okay, you could kind of get in there with a stone or get in there with a paddle wheel on a Dremel and maybe polish it out, but eventually it got to the point where you couldn't, and the only fix was to actually replace the entire lower head, which was, you know, a couple $1,000s. Okay, on this machine here, we can release the set screw from the side, which is located right here. Okay, and this lower channel just slides out. Okay, we can pull this out and polish it as many times as we want. Okay, so we can take any abrasions out, whatever. If it gets to the point we can't polish it anymore, buy a new piece like this, which is probably significantly less than the entire lower head, of course. Okay, if this thing likes to seize up on you once in a while, guys, and it will try to seize up on you. Okay, right now it's nice and loose, but the way I get it out of here, okay, there's a screw on the front of it, okay? You can put it with a pair of pliers on there and yank it out maybe, but what works even better is you take a screwdriver and you get on the screw and you pry from the side and you just pry it out of there. Okay? From the screw. Comes right out.
One thing Matt was telling us about, be careful not to drop those Phillips heads down into that hole. Because it could shoot down into your channel and get back into your wire. He says it's a nightmare when it happens.
Not that that's happened to him.
Yeah, I'm sure it has, because he says it's a nightmare.
That's why I shut the machine down. Okay, when I'm doing this.
When they say you can take a magnet, at least take them back out if you have to.
They're stainless.
Yep.
Can't do that.
Oh, they're non-magnetic stainless.
Yep.
Ah.
So the last piece, guys, is the lower roller. Okay, the lower roller is a left-hand thread. Okay, so you're going to tighten it to loosen it. Okay, remember that. Don't be cranking it the opposite way and seize it up. Okay. Now, basically, guys, if it does seize up on you, since it is a left-hand thread, there's a 6mm Allen head right there. You can take a wrench, tighten it, and it'll break it free. Okay, when you pull this out, guys, basically all you got to do is clean the roller itself. There's supposed to be a groove in it. Okay, it's not like the older FX and FA where it was a flat roller. Okay, now over time, guys, the bearings are going to eventually need to be replaced. Okay, so basically cleaning this thing, no problem. You just clean it, put it back in place. Okay, you spin this thing, you can feel whether the bearings are no good or not. You feel if there's a little bit of a hitch in there, if they got some play in it, whatever else. To actually take this housing apart, guys, I'm not going to pretty it up. It's a pain in the ass. I'm not going to take it apart because basically when you take it apart and put it back together, you compress the wave washer, and basically the wave washer needs to be replaced after you're taking it apart and putting it back together a bunch of times. Okay, that actually is a part that needs to be replaced with the bearing. Okay, then the roller can actually move back and forth when that happens. Okay, so if we go into maintenance menu, if we go to AT maintenance, we can go into the lower roller guide, and this basically shows the lower roller housing. Okay, so these two screws come out, guys, and the bearing block comes out. Okay, the only problem is it's not going to come out because it's got suction in there. Okay, so that's why they got a tapped hole in here on both sides. You take the screws, you put them in there, and you go about 1/8 of a turn at a time for about a week, and then it finally comes off. Okay,
For about a week.
so basically the bearing block comes off, and then the lower roller comes off. Okay, all of this stuff is connected to the lower roller shaft. Okay, the screw comes off the end, you got the wave washer, okay, then you got a spacer, you got your first bearing, you got another spacer, you got your second bearing, you got an oil seal ring, and then your plate, okay. Usually I take it apart, I lay the parts out the way they're supposed to be laid out, and I put them back together. When you change the bearings, guys, okay, it's important, you need to change the wave washer and the oil seal ring with the bearings, okay, so all three of those components are going to be changed. Okay, the bearings typically will last 6 months to a year. Okay, a lot of times closer to a year. Okay, on the older machines it was about 3 to 6 months, about as long as they lasted, because they weren't really isolated from the water coming through. Okay, in your accessories that come with the machine, there is one extra set of bearings for the lower roller. There's also 2 extra wave washers and 2 extra oil seal rings. Okay, so you got your first change. And basically you just need to keep a couple extra sets of lower roller bearings on hand. Okay? So I mean, I put it on the maintenance schedule. You guys want to check this every 6 months. Basically you're going to be checking it more often than that, because when you do maintenance on it, you know, once a month taking the heads apart, you're probably going to take this out and spin it and feel whether the bearings feel bad or not. Okay? Now with the bigger wire, guys, the bearings can be a little bit shot and it'll keep running. Okay? And not really have any detriments to the part. Even if they got a little bit of a hitch in there or whatever. Okay, 10th-thou wire, 12th-thou wire, it's going to pretty much ignore it. Bearings got to get really bad. Eventually, the 10th-thou wire will start kind of like jerking it, and it'll put lines in the part and things like that. Okay, however, if you ever run fine wire, you go down to 4th-thou wire, 6th-thou wire. These bearings have basically any type of a hitch in there with 4th-thou wire, it'll just constantly break the wire. They got to be perfect. Okay. So, one more thing, guys, when the thing goes back together, okay, one more important thing, all right, after you clean all these components, that's as far as you go with the lower head. when the upper half of the lower head goes back on, make sure this is free of any obstructions or burrs or any scratches, any high spots. Same thing with this. If you put it back together and there's something sandwiched in between, it's going to break the plate in half. Okay, so then your machine's going to be down until you get a new plate. All right, so make sure that that's nice and flat. You know, you can take a stone and stone it, you know, before you put it back together. Okay.
Guys use Arkansas stones at all?
Mm-hmm.
Those are nice ones for that kind of stuff, so you don't actually gouge it. You know, they're totally, it's like a piece of marble.
Yep. Right. So that's as far as you guys go with the lower head. Okay, all these components get cleaned, put it back together. We're in good shape. Okay.